Most people assume complexity is a problem, something organizations tolerate, something they're trying to fix, something caused by poor communication or bad management. But what if complexity isn't a failure? What if it's a feature? Because when you look closely, large organizations don't just endure complexity. They protect it, they expand it. And once you understand why, you'll realize complexity is one of the most powerful tools corporations have. Think about the biggest corporate scandals you've ever heard of. Enron, Wells Fargo, Volkswagen, Boeing. They weren't simple. They weren't one person making one bad decision. They were layered, compartmentalized, spreadsheeted to death, so that when things went wrong, nobody could easily point to one clean cause. Not because the truth didn't exist, but because it got buried under process. Complexity does something very useful. It obscures responsibility. When processes are simple, accountability is obvious. But when systems become layered, segmented, and opaque, no single person appears responsible for the outcome. Decisions dissolve into committees. Outcomes hide inside procedures. Mistakes become process issues. Complexity doesn't eliminate blame. It diffuses it. After the 737 MAX crashes, the story wasn't a single engineer made a mistake. The story was outsourced vendors, shifting requirements, certification delegation, regulatory capture arguments, internal deadlines, and competing layers of management pressure. So when the public asked, who approved this? The answer wasn't a name. It was a maze. Enron didn't hide risk through secrecy alone. It hid risk through complexity, special purpose vehicles, structured finance, off-balance sheet entities. The complexity wasn't incidental. It was defensive architecture. Change threatens systems, and complexity resists change by default. Every layer introduces approval gates, compliance checks, coordination costs. Even when everyone agrees change is needed, the system makes action exhausting. Not because anyone says no, but because saying yes requires navigating friction. Complexity turns momentum into paperwork. If you've ever watched a large bank try to change one internal software process, you've seen this mechanism. A change request becomes a meeting becomes a committee becomes risk review, then legal review, then infosec review, then vendor assessment, then implementation window, then rollout committee, then post-mortem committee, and the original goal quietly dies of exhaustion. In US healthcare, everyone agrees the billing system is broken. Hospitals hate it, insurers hate it, patients hate it, doctors hate it, and yet it survives because change isn't just technical. It's procedural, contractual, regulatory, bureaucratic. The system is so complex that reform becomes nearly impossible to execute cleanly. Here's another advantage. Complex systems require specialists. The more complicated the system, the fewer people truly understand it. That creates dependence. Employees become irreplaceable, not because they're exceptional, but because the system is unreadable without them. This discourages disruption from within and makes external scrutiny difficult. Complexity doesn't just protect organizations, it protects positions. This is why many corporate environments reward knowledge hoarding without officially rewarding it, because the person who understands the system becomes a gatekeeper, and gatekeepers are powerful. Many Fortune 500 companies still run critical infrastructure on decades-old systems. COBOL, mainframes, layered workflows that no one wants to touch. Not because it's optimal, but because the organization has become dependent on the complexity. The complexity turns into job security, internal leverage, and operational gravity. We assume corporations want efficiency. Sometimes they do, but efficiency creates clarity, and clarity creates vulnerability. Simple systems are easy to measure, easy to audit, easy to criticize. Complex systems blur cause and effect. They make it harder to tell whether something is broken or simply misunderstood. From a defensive standpoint, inefficiency can be useful. The pharmaceutical supply chain is a perfect example. The list price isn't the real price. Rebates exist behind the curtain. PBMs negotiate in private. Everyone blames someone else for high drug costs. Patients see chaos, but the chaos is profitable. And complexity provides the cover story. It's complicated. When systems are messy, the organization can always claim, "You just don't understand how it works." And sometimes, that statement functions like a shield. As organizations grow, complexity grows faster than headcount. Each new product, regulation, or market adds layers. Over time, the system becomes too large for any one person to fully grasp. At that point, power shifts. Those who control the process matter more than those who control the mission. Complexity centralizes influence quietly. In defense procurement, complexity doesn't just happen. It becomes a moat. The rules are dense. The compliance requirements are endless. The bidding process is specialized. That means only certain players can compete. The complexity filters outsiders, and the companies who master the process gain disproportionate power, even if the mission is national security. This is why inside many corporations, process owners outrank visionaries in practice. Not on paper, but in control. Because process control is resource control. Process control decides what gets funded, what gets delayed, and what dies quietly. Corporations don't love complexity because it's elegant. They love it because it reduces accountability, slows external pressure, creates internal leverage, resists disruption. Complexity is not accidental. It's a stabilizing force. In systems optimized for survival, once it exists, it perpetuates itself. Volkswagen's emissions scandal wasn't just a bad engineering choice. It was a corporate system failure wrapped in complexity. Testing procedures, regulatory loopholes, software detection logic, split teams, and management pressure. The complexity didn't prevent wrongdoing. It made wrongdoing harder to trace. With Wells Fargo, frontline employees were blamed, then middle management, then sales culture, then incentives, then leadership, then risk management, then the board. It was the perfect diffusion model, and complexity makes diffusion possible. When organizations say, "It's complicated," they're often telling the truth, but they're not telling you why. Complexity isn't always a mistake. Sometimes, it's the mechanism. This was quiet mechanisms. The easiest way to test this idea is simple. Ask a corporation to simplify something that benefits them. Watch what happens. You won't get resistance that looks like conflict. You'll get resistance that looks like procedure, delay, review, policy, alignment. Complexity wins quietly. Next time, we'll look at a system that affects nearly everyone, and why it feels like it's quietly disappearing. Why the middle class keeps shrinking. Once you see it, you can't unsee it.